Hello, everybody. Okay, this is a little video for the re-record mix now. This is the same session that we left off on the previous video, except for this one has some more Foley and sound design in it, more sound effects. So when I was making the previous video, afterward I realized, oh shoot, there was another session that had more sound design in there. So all I had to do was just import session data from that into this one, and what do you know? Because of all the routing being the same, using the same template, I just import the session data, and it all fit perfectly within the session and was routed appropriately. So it's very convenient. I highly recommend, if you're working with another sound designer or another re-record mixer, always ask them, hey, what templates are you using? Maybe I can use yours, so that when I send the audio to you, it's a lot easier for you to get the audio. They'll love you for that. Makes it a lot easier for them to pour their time and energy into you, especially if it's some sort of mentorship or anything like that. Okay, let's just take a quick little review of what we have. We have all of this dialogue. We have a voiceover and then dialogue tracks, all getting routed to this dialogue stem right here. And then all of those, the stems, are being used likewise for, say, all music is getting routed to the music stem. All sound effects are getting routed to the sound effects stem. All my stems are right here. Notice how I have to put them in input mode so that audio will pass through.
To my account.
So all the dialogue will go to this track, which then will go to my print track where I can print it here. And then the effects will go to the M&E, or music and effects track, which is this one, which then ends up to the print track, which then goes to my headphones, right? So I can hear it. So you can notice that no other outputs are going directly to my headphones. It's all terminating essentially at this print track. So we are going to actually change that real quick, because I think I want to do a little bit of processing before it gets to the print. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new stereo. Might as well make it an audio track. Or, let's just do it as a, yeah, that's fine. We'll keep it an audio track. We'll call this one um, the mix bus or something, whatever, who cares. And then we're going to send our dialogue out to the mix. And then same thing with the M&E, right? Because my effects and music are going to the M&E track, so I'll send that out the mix bus as well. And then I'm going to send the mix bus the mix bus to my print track. So any processing I do on this mix bus will end up in the print. So let's go ahead and get started on some of those little things to further help out. We're going to go ahead and put as a the last chain, we're going to go ahead and put a limiter on there. Now I'm using this FabFilter one because it has true peak limiting. See how it says TP? That means true peak. So I can turn that off, but I'm going to keep that on, and we're going to be true, or we're going to be limiting that at -2, which is a very good standard. And we're just going to, I'll give it a little bit of gain for the moment, just to help it out. So that's on my mix bus, which is going to be going to my print track. So any audio that gets printed will have the L2 effect on there. I'm going to do the same thing for my dialogue, but I'm going to not do any gain on there. I'm just going to make sure it never goes over -2. And we'll do that same thing for the effects and the music. Okay. Now, what we need to do is we also need to set up some reverbs, because these boom mic, or these dialogue tracks, I think they were recorded with a lavalier mic, so it's a little boomy, doesn't quite feel as natural. Movement, or the character moving their face and such. It's just, you can just tell there's something a little funny with it. So we need to kind of place it in a room. So I'm going to go ahead and give us another, let's just start with a stereo aux track. We'll call this one dialogue verb. And we're going to send that for dialogue, right? So it's going to go to the dialogue bus or group. And then I'm going to go ahead and select all my dialogue, Option Shift, send that to dialogue reverb. They're all down at negative infinity, so let's leave that be for now. And then on there, on the insert, let's go ahead and just throw on there, clearly you want to be using a better reverb, but we're just going to use Deverb because it's nice and accessible for most of you. How about a really short decay? Yeah, that's fine. We'll come back to that later when we need it. Okay, the other thing we're going to do is I kind of want to use EQs on essentially everything. So I'm going to highlight all the way to right here. I want EQ to be accessible for every track. So I'm going to go ahead and throw an EQ on everything. But before I do that, I'm making a decision right now. I'm going to use a more advanced feature of Pro Tools with automation and plugins. So you don't have to do this. You can just put an EQ on there, set it, and leave it for the entire duration, which is okay for lots of instances. But there's a lot of times where you actually want to be treating like this clip, say, differently than this clip and then differently than this clip, which actually there is an instance where we're definitely going to be doing that. I'm just going to set it up for that feature. So if you're watching this video and you're like, I'm never going to use that, or I'm not going to use it for my project right now, that's okay. But for the future, you will. It's nice and easy just to throw a plugin on there and leave it, and that's what it does for the whole session. That's easy, but doing this is a little bit more advanced. So we're going to include that in the video. Okay. So before I do any of that, I'm going to go to my settings and notice under the mixing tab, plugin controls default to auto enabled. So by having that button checked, watch this. So I'll shift when I click that. So I have everything. I'm holding option shift so that it applies to everything. Plugin, let's go ahead and use my FabFilter plugin because I really like it. All right, great. So it did it to every single track, which is nice. Okay. Now, I probably actually do want to start off at least with a high pass around 80 hertz. And I definitely want something here. Oh, just give me a couple nodes so I can, and then also this. Let's just give a nice, we'll chop that off right there. Yeah, I kind of like that. So I'm going to use that for my dialogue. So I hold option and I can just option drag it onto all of these dialogue tracks, make it a little bit easier for me to get started. So they're all fine. Excellent. Okay, cool. But bypass them, of course, because they're not going to be, if we're not going to be using them at the moment. We're going to deal with that voiceover in just a second. Okay, so we got all those EQs on there, and then check this out. When we're looking at, say, what we can automate, every single aspect of that plugin is automated. That it's been automated or enabled for automation. See, it's all on the right side instead of the left side. It seems a little overwhelming, but don't worry. It actually becomes quite easy. Okay, so before we get into any of this, what we need to do is we need to take a look at our standards. So whatever you're doing as a re-record mixer, you always need to make sure you have the spec sheet, or at least the spec sheet for the deliverables. So let's check out, how about this 2021 Sundance Film Festival spec sheet. So this one is asking for audio to be in 5.1. So always double check that, because a lot of film festivals want them 5.1 nowadays, or they have up mixers that will, or there's little things they can do, or you can do if you don't have a 5.1 scenario. But just keep in mind that they typically do want 5.1. Let's look at now the audio spec for loudness. Notice down here it says -24 dB LUFS with a maximum peep of -2 dB. So LUFS is for your, it's kind of like the average volume. Used to be RMS. We're going by LUFS now. AKA also LKFS. It could be either one. It just depends. But they're the same thing, LUFS and LKFS. So this is saying that the average volume needs to be -24 throughout the entire project. Now, what they didn't put here is plus or minus 1 or 2. So some places will say, yeah, you're going to be at, your target is -24 plus or minus 1 or 2 dB. And so if it's plus or minus 1 dB, that means that you can go all the way down to -25, or you can go all the way up to -23. Clearly, if it was plus or minus 2, then you can go all the way down to negative 26 or up to negative 22. Make it louder. Now, maximum peak, this says negative 2 dB. It actually means negative 2 dB true peak, TB. That would be technically correct, but we can understand this. But true peak maximum is what we're after here. And look, it's across the board for just all for your features or your shorts, stereo or 5.1. All of these are the same, which is this is pretty common, negative 24. Let's actually check out the 2002 one. It should be the same. Yeah, same exact thing. But now compare that to the Netflix standard, where Netflix is not only saying, like, here's what you should use for your reference for level for mixing, which I highly recommend. Actually, this is not a bad recommendation right here. But they're asking for negative 27 LKFS. Remember, LKFS is the same as LUFS, doesn't matter. Plus or minus 2. That's nice. So you could be targeting, but this is for dialogue only. So you could be targeting negative 27 for your dialogue only. And that's it's dialogue gated, which means that it's only measuring dialogue whenever it's occurring. It's not measuring any blank space to go into the average of your volume. So you have to use specific plugins for that. Definitely gets a little bit more expensive, but it's good to know that there's at least a difference here. But now notice how this one doesn't say anything about the average volume of the entire program. So they're just targeting dialogue, because dialogue to them is most important in the storytelling aspect of a film. So they want to make sure that everybody can hear the dialogue at the same level at home when they're watching Netflix. It just so happens, though, that if you target negative 27, plus or minus 2, so that's nice. Negative 27 LKFS for your, let's go with LUFS. That's much easier. Negative 27 LUFS for all the dialogue in your project. It's possible that when you bring in all the sound design or all the sound effects and all the music, that it goes up to negative 24. So it's possible to hit both standards at the same time. If you can do that, you're in really good shape. So always make sure you have your spec sheet. So that's why I put my limiter at negative 2 true peak, because I don't want to get flagged by quality assurance that I'm out of spec and beyond negative 2 dB TP. So make sure if you're using this plugin right here, like Maxim, which I don't recommend using, it's not a true peak limiter. So it's not going to actually give you a true peak necessarily. So that's why you got to use a little bit more of an expensive plugin. The Pro Limiter, the Avid Pro Limiter, actually works great for that. So definitely use that one if you have it. Okay, drink your coffee now. Okay, all right, let's get into it. So looks like we got everything set up pretty well. I'm happy with that. Okay. So now let's get into the actual re-record aspect of this. So first things first is automation. I like to start with dialogue and then build around the dialogue, right? Because especially if I'm doing something for Netflix, then I can target Netflix and then make sure I'm hitting that standard, but then it can be thrown across to any platform. If you're doing something with YouTube, definitely want to check out specs for that, because that might be a little different. It's definitely probably going to be a lot louder. Okay, so notice in this voiceover, this is true for voiceovers, but also for dialogue too, but definitely for voiceovers. Notice how the audio has energy levels that are high, and then as it continues on, it gets lower. So you can kind of see this downward slope. Look at this one too. Downward slope in audio or in volume. Ooh, this one's got a weird upward slope. But you can generally see how it flows, right? So what we need to do is we need to even that out. Many of you might be thinking, let's just use a compressor for that. But then what does that do? That just takes the peaks and brings them down, right? So you're going to hear the compressor occurring on all of these instances where it's above the threshold. And that's not it's pretty musical and it sounds cool musically, but for post-production for film, you definitely don't want that. You definitely want it to be a little bit more smooth or transparent, something that's not necessarily understood. That we're behind the scenes making everything sound nice. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this, okay? Now, I highly recommend having an actual control surface for this, but I left mine at the studio, so I can't do that. So I'm going to show you how you can do that without a control surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to my automation mode. Let's go to touch, right? All right. And now let's listen to it.
This is my story.
Oh, see, we're in solo right now. How come we're not hearing that? Probably because Mixbus is not solo saved.
This is my story.
There we go. Okay. So now just for clarification, the dialogue, the signal flow here is going to our dialogue, or this track is going to the dialogue subgroup, which is this guy right here, which is then going to the mix bus, which is this guy right here, which is then going to the print track, which is this guy right here. So I have to make sure all that is in input enabled. All right, so let's check it out.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700,
So we're going to go ahead and even that out, especially right here too.
I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces.
See how the energy goes away? So if you click on this little tiny guy right there, it gives you the volume fader right here, and you can just automate as you go this way.
This is my story.
Let's make sure we can see it actually as we do it.
This is my story.
Ooh, that's already, look at that. When I did that little automation move, sorry, I wish I had that so you could see it as I did it. But look at that. That's nice. It's just during that one moment, and listen how even that sounds.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700,
A little too much right there, but let's hear it.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700,
A little too much, so that's okay. Let's just go ahead and now turn a little bit of that down.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by
Yeah, let's get that next part.
approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times.
This one I might just draw in actually.
Abduction, I have been taken 10 times.
Yeah, I just wanted to get I've been taken right there.
I'm always taken from large. I'm always taken from large.
Oh, that must have been a weird edit right there. That's funny.
I'm always taken from large. I'm always taken from large.
Let's just.
I'm always taken from large, expensive.
See, I missed that right there, so I could highlight it and just. Oops. Let's make sure our nudge value is at like 1 frame. There we are.
I'm always taken from large, expensive areas. Aboard this ship.
That one right there. We can kind of. Let's go ahead and get that real quick too.
Aboard this ship.
It's really fast.
Areas. Aboard this ship. Aboard this ship.
Too much. That's okay. We can just.
This ship. Beings of an alien. Aboard this ship. Beings of an alien nature extract my biological.
Yeah, it's a little uneven right there.
Beings of an alien nature extract my biological material.
I want that same thing right here.
Extract my biological material in a process that can only be described as unfortunate.
Okay, so I won't go on and do the rest of it, right, for time's sake. But you can see how this really helps. Let's listen to the whole thing real quick.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas. Aboard this ship, beings of an alien nature extract my biological material in a process that can only be described as unfortunate.
So this is definitely a clip right here where you can see like, oh wow, without any of this automation, it definitely sounds. You can start to hear like, oh wow, that really doesn't sound polished, and that's what re-record mixers are used to and looking for. Whereas you probably didn't hear it before, but now you probably, hopefully, definitely do. Okay, so for time's sake, we won't do that. We're gonna keep going. Now, let's use another example for EQ as we're doing this. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I get out of touch mode and go into my read mode. And I want to find, is it this guy?
Aliens, not gray alien.
No, is it this guy?
That make you feel?
All right, cool. So as I'm going through this, I'm going to make sure all my dialogue sounds even. So sometimes I just go piece by piece. It really depends on what I'm doing. But I want to show you now why we did our plugins in automation mode. So notice here, listen to this for sure.
How did that make you feel?
Compared to this.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
So not only are these definitely different in their audio levels, but also in like the actual recording, like timbre. Like listen to the high frequencies in this one.
How did that make you feel?
Right? Seems a little bit more breathy and has a little bit more less weight to it, but this one definitely has some weird weight to it.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
And then there's this weird time where he moves his head and you can tell he like gets really close to the mic and there's this total change in timbre. So we need to address that. So here we go. All right, first things first is let's get our volume up in this guy. I imagine he's just definitely going to want to be up a little bit more overall.
How did that make you feel?
It's really quiet. And then we'll go ahead and just do this by hand.
How did that make you feel?
I won't feel back up.
How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel?
All right, it's a little bit more even, okay? But now let's do some plugin fun stuff here. So I'm opening up my plugin, right? I am now, oh, sorry, we need this window. Window, automation, which is also Command 4 if you have a numpad. So I'm going to put this over here. So check this out. This is where a lot of fun is. So at this moment, I'm going to automate this area to have the EQ changes that I have. Because what if I try to make this sound good? Let's go ahead and just make it sound good.
How did that make you feel?
So there, I'll get a little boom in this side. Let's go ahead and just loop it. It's going to be really irritating for a second.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, let's get into our...
How did that make you feel? 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 How did that make...
All right, let's hear that now.
How did that make you feel?
All right, it's great. But then, see how I come over here and listen to it over here.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
Definitely sounds kind of off right there. So we can't do that, right? Definitely need to actually automate that a little bit. So let's just address that real quick.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer. It's not easy being the newcomer. The newcomer.
Okay, it's a little bit better, but still, we need to have an entirely different plugin setting for this, right? Because it just doesn't work. So now that I'm in touch, right? If I want to move any of these around, it's going to automatically put that automation on there. Because remember, all of the plugin parameters have been automated. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into, well, we're going to, in our plugin automation mode, I'm going to turn off volume so that this doesn't apply to volume. I like volume where it is already, so I turned off volume. And then I'm going to get into preview mode. In preview mode, I can change any of my plugin parameters as I'm playing, and it's not going to be locking to its automation. So now I can,
well,
let's just go ahead and listen.
Well, let's give it up for Gene.
So there's a definite mid-range in there, or honk, or it sounds like a blanket's over it.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer. Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer. Well, let's give it up for Gene.
And we have to give it some more high end too, because it's just so muted.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
Okay, but then as I do it, it starts to get too much in this end. So I like this setting. We're just moving fast right now for time's sake.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
Right at the very end, it gets really nasally. So now what I'm doing is I'm in preview mode. I can now, I don't know where it is on here, but the quick key is Command Option question mark, and watch this, Command Option question mark. I have it selected, and bam, I just wrote in the automation for this little section for the plugin automation. So now I go out of preview mode and watch this. Click on this clip, and it's these plugin settings, but then click on this clip, and it's these plugin settings, so you can actually see it.
Well,
It changed based on here. So, I mean, I could go over here, right? And if I move stuff around now, watch. Hit play, because I'm in read mode, right? Let's say I'm in read mode. It's all been automated, so I can't change it. But if I get into my preview mode, it bypasses the automation movements that are displayed on your timeline. And I can actually just say, oh, cool, I like it right there. That's great. And then Command Option question mark, write it in so that just during that moment, it's automated, right? Very nice. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, cool. So it's been written in just that one little area. So now you're writing in automation just for every single clip, just almost like it's Audio Suite, but it's in plugin format. So this can get very confusing because you can accidentally screw stuff up very easily by not being in preview mode or being in preview mode or not being in read or being in touch mode. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. So let's actually, now that we're done, I want to or getting this like kind of statically where it is. I'm gonna do a little bit of automation now. So let's actually just practice real quick. Go in preview mode.
it's not easy being the newcomer.
So I'm going to turn that down as he says newcomer. So I get out of preview mode, go back into touch mode.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
Okay, cool. Now watch it.
Well, let's give it up for Gene. It's not easy being the newcomer.
So much easier to listen to because we don't hear that honkiness now. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and do that for everything. Clearly, the more experience you have, the more you have to look at. Now, let's go ahead and go to our music. So let's say we've got all of that leveled out just the way we like. And then we go to our music and we get this leveled out just the way we like. For example, listen to this music right here.
This is my story.
So it's nice and full all the way right here, but then the second the voiceover comes in, it's just way too overwhelming. So we need to definitely get that into automation.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately...
Oh, what did I do? Make sure we're in the right one. Oh yeah, we're in touch. Okay. Get out of that. My volume mode wasn't on. There we go. See what I mean? You can get messed up. I was trying to write automation, but I didn't have volume on right here. But it's always on normally. It's just because I brought this up that I undid it. So let's go ahead and start again. Start turning down.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial
Now
forces.
I'm in touch mode, so I had to be holding it the whole time. If I did it in latch mode, it would have written the whole time if I let go. That's okay though. I kind of liked it at this volume right there. So what if I just highlight it and hit Command D a bunch of times? There we are.
25 to 28 years of age.
Maybe even turn it up during this part.
Current whereabouts unknown.
Oh, definitely. Let's hit that middle. I mean, we're getting, we're bouncing around now, but it bothers me. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that real quick. it's good. It could be better though. So if I highlight it and I'm on my smart tool, if I turn it down, it does everything. Oh, too much. Much better. Okay. All right. So let's say you go ahead and start leveling everything else out, right? Make sure that you perhaps were targeting a certain, meter for this, making sure everything's at -27, and then build the rest according to that. Maybe you'll hit -24 plus or minus 1 or 2. That'd be great, right? So you can go throughout this and start automating the EQs, start automating the plugins and the volumes, but plugin automation and volume automation are paramount to re-record mixing. Okay, so now let's say you've gone ahead and done all that. You're like, all right, this is great. And then you start trying to check out your where we're at in regards to our meters. So let's just go ahead and measure the meters for just this little part right here, okay? So if I solo it, right, we're only hearing just the voiceover. I'm going to go ahead and throw on my print track, right? I'm going to go ahead and throw on there the Uline loudness meter, and we're looking at integrated right here. So we're in solo. I'll just hit play.
This is my story.
And it's measuring in real time.
During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas.
So let's say we measured all the dialogue together and it was at -30, right? We're trying to target -27, right? So we want to do all of the dialogue together. The problem is though, is we've already automated, right? So what we need to do then is either trim this up, but that would be kind of ridiculous because after we've done this process, all of our dialogue will sound even together. So we want to do all the dialogue at the same time. So we're going to use a VCA for that. So I'm going to create 3 VCAs real quick. Call this one VDX for dialogue VCA. How about VMX for music? And then VFX for effects. Now I'm going to highlight these, Command G to make a group, call this one DX, and then I'm going to have the VCA for the dialogue, control that. Now watch. We'll do the same thing for the music. Command G for a group, call it music. We're having the music VCA control that, and then we'll do the same thing for all of our effects. And this one is FX. Okay, so now if I want to control just the dialogue, if I turn this up or down, see how it turns up my dialogue? But what's beautiful, see I kept it down a little bit. Now we'll go look at our voiceover. See how it's got that additional blue line? It's saying that the black line is my automation movements, but then the blue line is the actual volume because it's following the VCA. So I can just turn it all up or down globally, which is very, very convenient. So we were at what, -30? So what if we go, how about we go to, let's just see if this translates directly. So that's -3 or +3 for the dialogue. Now we can hear this again, but we need to make sure we go to our meter and we cancel it out and we hit play again.
This is my story.
Sorry, we need to solo just the dialogue, which is actually quite convenient because, you know, I also have this VCA, so I can just, on the dialogue VCA, hit solo. And what do you know? It muted everything else except for the solo safe tracks and the dialogue. So now let's check out our measurement.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times.
Okay, great. So now look at our integrated LUFS are at -28 for the dialogue. Let's pretend like that's measuring all of the dialogue for the whole film that we checked out. So we're at -28 for our LUFS here. And our standard for Netflix was -27 plus or minus 2. So we're technically in spec for Netflix right now. And then we can just add in the sound effects and the music to sound good with it, and we'll probably get to negative 24. But I can boost it up just a little bit, so maybe I'll go to 3.5, and we can remeasure that and so on. But we're not going to. So now let's go ahead and check out what I did for just an example. Okay, let's go ahead. I've already printed this, so I'll put an input mode so that we can just hear it. So look at all the automation I've done for that, and let's look at all the automation I've done across the board. There's for the music. Kind of left all this Foley the same. I kind of just left that alone. Maybe I lost motivation. Oh, there's that sound effects hit right there. Yeah, okay, cool. And then there's all my stems. So let's go ahead and now just measure. If I hit solo on my VCA for dialogue, let's go ahead and just measure what that would sound like. And notice how I have the Uilleann meter after the limiter, right? That way we're not getting any of the limiters, or we're monitoring what the limiter is doing to our meters. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and cancel it, and then let's just go ahead and hear this.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance, approximately 1700.
Oh, oops, I got a different weird little plugin on there. Let's kill that.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial...
Oh, you know what's even better than doing that? Check this out. We've already printed the dialogue right here. So what if I just highlight it, Audio Suite, go to my Uilleann meter, and then we just analyze it. Oh my gosh, my dialogue is so hot. Like it's at negative 20. That's ridiculous. And then I wonder what everything is together. Wow, negative 21. That's way too hot. So we'd need to fix that. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I know the problem. Oh, it's something behind the scenes I have to change. I'll bet you if I turn all the gain down on my limiters, that would work better. Okay, but at least you know how to target everything, right? So let's go ahead and make actually this, let's see if we can target this to be nice and even.
My story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas. Aboard this ship, beings of an alien nature extract my biological material in a process that can only be described as unfortunate. I'm never alone. A constant partner in the extraction process. A single female human being. Her presence is my only solace.
So you can kind of tell that, like, as the longer it goes on, this number starts to fluctuate a lot, or a lot slower or smaller increments. Let's check out these.
Has anyone heard a similar account of alien abduction?
This reminds me of a time when I was abducted. Aliens, green aliens, not gray aliens, took my entire body apart.
How did that make you feel?
Well, they put me back together, but after that, I never really felt whole again.
So our dialogue is actually quite hot, so I would have to turn up or down my dialogue to target it. Now, we'd have to measure this by watching the whole thing, which would be quite long. So you'll have to do that on your own. So just reset your meters, solo those, watch it, and be like, cool, we're at negative 27. Great, I can now mix the whole thing on that, and then never check your meters until the very end. It's like, oh, great, maybe we're at negative 24 then. So let me see if I can get this to negative. We're going to target negative 27 right now, okay?
Story.
Here's our
During
VCA.
a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrials.
Okay.
This is my story.
Oh, we're using the wrong one.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas.
So I can't just turn it up now because then that would have the average over the whole measurement, right? It's going to be taking into account that it was loud here, and then I turn it down here. So I have to clear it, and then let's use our VCA again. Let's go down to like just +1.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces.
That's much better.
Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas.
So let's say, yeah, look, we got -27. So let's say that we played the whole way through, and including all the dialogue, it was always at -27. That's great. And then I can add in, how about the music, and make sure that that sounds good with it. So then let's just see what the meters would sound like then.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas. Aboard this ship, beings of an alien nature extract my biological material in a process that can only be described as unfortunate.
So the music's not
I'm
adding
never
too
alone.
much here, right?
A constant partner in the extraction process. A single female human being. Her presence is my only solace.
So if we add in, say, the VCA for all the sound effects too, so we don't need anything here, you're going to hear the kind of the shudder of the little, what is that thing? The little projector. So let's see what that does to our meters now.
This is my story. During a routine maintenance survey at approximately 1700, I was abducted by extraterrestrial forces. Since my initial abduction, I have been taken 10 times. I'm always taken from large, expensive areas. Aboard this ship, beings of an alien nature extract my biological material in a process that can only be described as unfortunate. I'm never alone. A constant partner in the extraction process. A single female human being. Her presence is my only solace. Auburn hair, brown eyes, approximately 25 to 28 years of age. Current whereabouts unknown. Has anyone heard a similar account of alien abduction?
Oh, there's that reverb. So here's the dialogue reverb I use.
This reminds me of a time when I was abducted.
Super short.
Aliens,
Super short.
green
period of time.
aliens,
You can
not
barely
gray
hear it.
aliens, took my entire body apart. I don't know why.
So we're still
How
measuring
did that make you
27,
feel?
0.7.
Well, they put me back together, but after that, I never really felt whole again.
So you can go through the whole thing, and this will probably measure at -27 for the whole thing. So this would hit the Netflix standard because I have -27 for the dialogue, and then everything else around it kind of doesn't. It just kind of it sounds good where it is, right? So imagine if I were to push this further, make make it at -25.5, which is plus 1.5 dB or LUFS. So then I'm plus or minus. I'm still within the frame of plus or minus 2 for -27, and then I can start adding in the sound effects and Foley and stuff, and music, and pushing even further to have some big moments, and maybe even get that down to -24. So it's possible to have a little bit of, or to hit both standards, but it's a little bit harder. You can already see how difficult it is, because your movements in regards to decibels on, say, my VCAs are not directly translating to my LUFS. So it's a little bit of an art form, but also very technical in how you're achieving it. So just be patient with yourself. My tip is to start with dialogue. Get dialogue to sound nice and pretty, make it nice and even, so that if you were to turn up the VCA for your dialogue, or turn all the dialogue up or down, it's always going to be the same. It'll always sound like it'll all sound even with itself. So then you can kind of know generally that the sound effects are going to be not overwhelming it halfway through the film, if you turn it down, or because if it sounds good in the first half. Of course, that means you need to double check it though. So that's just a short little thing. Oh, of course, sorry. We can print all these too. So then you can print all these at the end. And of course, what are you handing over? The big one, the big stereo mix right here. But of course, you're going to give them the dialogue, the effects, and the music, and then an M&E track as well, in case they need to overdub their own dialogue later. Okay. Happy mixing.